Just want to make sure you can all hear me. There we go. Okay. Hello, everybody. It's great to be with you today. I wanted to jump on live with you. I haven't been live in the group for a while, and I wanted to say hi and see how you're all doing. Our group is growing. Um, we are we're a really intimate group, and I really like that. But it's such a great group of women. You guys are awesome. I know each and every one of you, and I'm really excited about the idea of bringing a conversation to the forefront for all of us, for us to really expand and to grow and to be everything that we possibly want to be and to achieve what we want and so much more, because so often we're in the world of circumstances and obstacles and challenges, and these days, we're all experiencing them in our own versions. So I thought today would be a really good day to jump on and have a great conversation about something that keeps coming up in my world with clients, with prospective clients, with colleagues, and it really is all about women and asking for what they want and really learning how to receive it. Now it goes hand in hand with the whole idea of negotiating, which is pretty. It's not that it's absent for women; it's that more men are educated and more familiar with negotiating than women, and it's socially quite unusual for women to be trained in negotiating early in their lives. It's something that they usually learn, if they learn it at all, later on in the game. But today I want to dig even deeper, and I want to really talk just about asking for what you want and learning how to receive it, because it seems to be a very big obstacle for so many women. I'm not saying that men don't have this, but it really is a very predominant challenge for a lot of women. And when I talk to women and I ask them, well, what's in the way for you to ask for what you really, really want here? And they'll tell me mostly it's about the fear of hearing no, fear of failure. They're really worried about looking foolish, looking stupid, looking foolish, looking uh, unintelligent, looking and definitely hearing no. They don't want to hear no, and it really is these thoughts that go through women's minds when they really would love to ask for what they want, and they feel stopped. What very often happens is women will actually they'll back away from the desire and say it's not really that important, or you should see how much progress I've made. So they are taking small steps, which is great. Progress is really wonderful, but they're almost convincing themselves, they're actually selling themselves on the idea. They're really good at selling themselves on the idea that playing a little smaller is a little smarter or a little more acceptable. So it's interesting how the mind will actually sell you on playing smaller, but it won't sell you on playing bigger. And that's really what I want to talk about today. Today, it's really about asking, and even the whole notion of asking for what you want is really two parts. There's the internal psychological mental side of it, which is enormous and is fundamental. And then there's the strategic and tactical way in which to ask that has a higher um, higher possibility of you achieving what you want. So I want to start with a couple of stories from my own background about asking and how I'm not really sure how I really learned this, but I think I've always been very um, right from the beginning of my career. I was an asker. Um, a fearless asker. It's not that I didn't really worry about fear of failure. It's not that I didn't care about looking foolish, but my desire to ask was bigger than my fear. And I'll give you a couple of examples. And it started pretty early on. The first thing is when I first started in my career in the women's underwear business, uh, I took this job with the sales manager. I didn't know anything about underwear and I didn't know anything about sales, and he taught me a lot, but I was basically his assistant. After working for him about 8 or 9 months, we learned a lot about the product when we were selling, so we had to understand. I really fell in love with the whole product development process. I was enthralled with it. And so we would work with the product managers and they would tell us all about the product line and how it got developed and what the features were and what the benefits were. And I was really sort of fascinated and I started to get to know some of the product managers and I asked them questions about what they did and how they did it. And I don't know where I knew I really wanted to go into product development and I didn't want to be in sales. It's not that I didn't like sales, I loved sales, but I just knew that my heart and soul, I really fell in love with the product development side of it. And I really wanted that to be the direction I went in. Now, I'd only been with the company for about 8 or 9 months, and the head of sales was this big, scary, older guy. He was big and tall, white hair, like he had been with the company for 35 years. He was like the god of the company. He was like next in line to the owners, and like he was really powerful. And I said to my boss, who was a manager and who had been in the company a long time, I said, I really love working for you, but the truth is, I really have this yearning to go into product development. Will you support me? Now I give him credit because he could have said, "Who are you to want this?" And I helped you and I gave you your start. He was really great. He goes, "Well, he goes, I don't know what will happen, but I will get you a meeting with Whitney Drayton." That was his name, Whitney Drayton. I'll never forget it. But I'll also never forget. So I had this meeting with Whitney Drayton. Now I want you to know, I was a 25-year-old. I was like teeny tiny little girl going into Whitney Drayton's office. I was 24 years old at the time. And I went into Whitney's office, and Whitney had this giant desk in his, he had a huge office, it was a corner office, huge office, big desk. And when you sat in front of Whitney's desk, you were 15 feet away from him. His office was so big that sitting in front of him, you were 15 feet back. So you get like he was the king and I was the subject, and I had to make my case for why I wanted to go into product development. But I want you to know that this is the thing about it was and this is really what I want to say is I, for some reason, underneath it all, I just honored my desire and I honored my willingness to overcome my fear to ask. And it worked out because I got an assistant's position as an assistant in the product development area. My boss, I have to give him a lot of credit because in those days, men were not supporting women in getting ahead in their careers, but he was really nice to me and he let me. And Whitney, I have to say, Whitney, scary as he was, he gave me the opportunity, and that allowed me to really set my entire 2 decade career in place, and it was really the right path for me. But asking was a terror. I mean, can you imagine like the fear that I had to really overcome? And it's almost like I didn't really even think about no. I never even thought about no. I was just really focused on getting through the meeting and making my case. And that was not the first and last time that I was asking the big boys for, what I wanted in my career. It was a constant asking the presidents of companies for, opportunities. They were all men. I was working in a male dominated industry. And for some reason, I really learned how to ask. And I realized that asking was the only way to get what you wanted. And I was willing to go through the wars of asking. And for some reason, maybe because I learned it as in my family, my father was the strong one and he treated me like a guy. He treated me like I had opportunity like men. He convinced me that that was possible for me. And I believed him. Now, on the internal side of this, there certainly were a lot of no's. There were a lot of times where and by the way, a lot of times the no's came from female bosses. Here asking for what you want, men are going to react a particular way, women are going to react a particular way, and asking is a very daunting experience. But I do think that it's really an internal game first. You have to really make your fear and your doubt about yourself recede and bring your desire forward. And desire is the biggest. Desire and intention is bigger than anything else. If you have a big enough desire and you allow it to overtake your fear, you will ask, and more often than not, you will get. Especially when you really believe in yourself. So that leads me to the second part of the equation. Do you believe in yourself? Are you willing to develop your belief in yourself enough? And are you willing to go deep enough to believe in yourself where you will not let the naysayers stop you? And I've had many, many naysayers. In fact, one of my early mentors in my career was a man, and he gave me every bit of advice he ever gave me was absolutely the opposite of what it should have been. It was disgusting. He told me to just take to not speak up. He told me to take what I could get. He told me to not to ask for more, to not make waves. He told me not to negotiate. He told me everything wrong. And I trusted him because he was successful and I knew he really believed in me, but he believed in me with a very archaic thinking. And he really believed that women really shouldn't go for it, that women would. The reason he believed that is he thought that when women ask for too much, they're not respected. And he was wrong. He was absolutely wrong. He gave me the worst advice ever. But I only learned that later. And what I want to say is, I really I'm completely on a mission to have every single woman around me not go for less, but to go for more and to ask for more and to trust herself and to learn to believe in herself. But really, the truth is, that's only part of the equation. That's 50, it's really, maybe it's more than 50, maybe it's 70% of the equation. Believe in yourself and willingness to go for more and willingness to ask and willingness to put your fear to over learn how to overcome your fear long enough so that you don't, a lot of times the worry about fear of failure, feeling guilty that you're asking for too much when everybody else around you isn't, feeling the worry about, what are you going to do when you hear no, not having a recourse for that. Or sometimes it's just the biggest thing that people fear when they're asking, especially women, is the fear of being ashamed, fear of being embarrassed, that they're going to not know what to do when they hear no, or that they're going to be, when someone has the power to say yes or no and you hear no, that you're going to be ashamed. And none of that has any place in having a bigger, playing bigger, having more, having a richer, more rewarding life. And I'm not only just talking about money, I'm talking about having a richer, more rewarding life filled with experiences. If I had not asked for that opportunity, if I had not asked for some of the opportunities, I never would have been able to have the career I was meant to have earlier in my life. I was never have gotten the opportunity to travel all over Europe and go on shopping trips and merchandising trips. I never would have been promoted. I never would have learned how to negotiate. I never would have had the salary, the six-figure salary that I did early in my life. I never would have achieved my goal of becoming a vice president before I was 40. None of it would have happened if I had not learned how to ask. And it isn't just about in the workplace either. I never would have learned how to ask for, you know, um, having the kinds of living spaces, or I never would have learned. I sold a house once, and the real estate agent convinced me that what I wanted to ask for was too much. And she had this whole spreadsheet about why she was right. But intuitively, I had other reasons and other factors that I put into the equation. I said, I feel like we should really ask for more, and I believe we have a good, I have good evidence for that. And I went with my gut and the evidence that I believed in, and we got a higher price. But if I hadn't asked, if I had really trusted the expert and I hadn't gone with what I believed in, I never would have gotten it. So a lot of time, I'm not saying that it's worked every time, because a lot of times I've asked and I haven't gotten. But I really believe that just the learning how to ask, the learning how to confidently ask, the learning how to believe that you have an entitlement to ask, and loving the asking process. How about learning to love the asking process and learn how to ask with joy and with confidence and fearlessness, and the fun of the game of it? I think that's worth it all. So, yeah, so I think this conversation is really a great one. That's part one. I wanted to talk a little bit about the inner game of asking, the confidence piece of it, the belief in yourself piece of it, and the emotional side of asking. And in another conversation at another time, I want to have a conversation about now some of the strategies and tactics for how to ask successfully, and what to do when you get no, and how to deal with no, and how to turn no into yes, or a yes or more of a yes. And I think that's a really great conversation to have. But that's a different one. That's the second part of the equation. And the tactics and the strategies about how to do it gracefully, effectively, powerfully, and wisely, I think are just as important. But I think it's really great to have that, to break it up into two parts. Today was all about the inner game of asking, and just the game of asking for what you want and receive it and feel deserving of it. And that's the last thing I want to leave you with. I want you to ask yourself honestly, I know that many of us really do want to ask for what we want, but maybe what's in the way is not feeling like we deserve it. And I want you to sort of dig inside of yourself and ask yourself, what makes you say to yourself that you don't deserve? What causes you to say that? Where did you get that from? Think back on that, and let's have a little, I'd love to hear your comments. I'd like to hear from you guys in the comment box after this, if you haven't been able to be with me live, to share with me some of the things that you would like to ask for that you haven't asked for, and that you would like to kick around with this community, how to ask for what you want and learn how to get it. And if you have asked for something that you wanted and it worked out really well, share that. Or if you've asked for something that you wanted and it didn't work out, share that as well. So we can have a really great dialogue about the game of asking and the game of receiving, and learning how to be successful at both. All right, you guys, it's been great to be with you. And I'll see you next time. Okay, bye bye.